When will Russia attack America? When will nuclear war, Russian attack occur? Russia will not attack America as long as America has a retaliatory arsenal that can destroy Russia. Logically, Russia will wait until America disarms, which is what we have been doing steadily over 30 years. Russia will wait until America disarms to the point that our retaliatory arsenal will be so small that Russia can shoot down the warheads from the missiles fired from our submarines, because that's all we will have, because our bombers are not on alert. They'll be destroyed on the ground by Russian attack. Our ICBMs are not ready to be used, so they'll be destroyed in their silos. And so we have, instead of having a three-legged triad, we're down to a monad of just one leg, a stool with one leg, which is our boomer submarines. Now, how far along are we on the road or process of disarmament? We have actually reached the threshold. Russia has more interceptors than we have warheads on our submarines at sea. And so our warheads add up to zero, because that we have 1,120 on our missiles, on our submarines. And Russia can shoot down, reportedly, 1,300 warheads. So subtract 1,300 from 1,120, and you see we have zero. And so when will Russian attack occur? Well, they've reached this. They got us down by getting us to sign the latest arms control agreement in 2010, which went into effect in 2011, which was supposed to go into full effect like last year. They've already waited like a year. They have not attacked yet. And so I think they're waiting for the right time, which is the 70th anniversary of the restoration of the State of Israel. This is the 70th anniversary this year. And so this year, sometime 2018, should be when the Russian attack takes place. Now, this attack will actually be the judgment day that the Bible talks about in a few different places. Peter, I think it's 2 Peter, says that, the flood of Noah's time, that was water, that destroyed the world supposedly. Actually, it did not. But this next judgment, he says, will be by fire. And the nuclear attack will be that judgment by fire. Now, Peter says, he calls it the day of the Lord, that comes like a thief in the night. Now, that is the same phrase that is used in 1 Thessalonians chapter 4 and 5. Actually, it's chapter 5, verse 2. And the sudden destruction is in verse 3, and the rapture is at the end of chapter 4. And together, the rapture and the sudden destruction corresponds to the destruction of heaven and earth in 2 Peter chapter 3, verse 11 through 13. Now, 2 Peter is at the point of the new heaven, new earth. In other words, the destruction of the old is followed by the coming of the new heaven, new earth, and that puts it at the end of the millennium in Revelation 20 and 21, the beginning of 21. But the revelation, the millennium, is simply the church age, so it corresponds, the end of the millennium corresponds to the end of the church age back over in 1 Thessalonians chapter 5. But getting back to the issue of when this attack will occur, like I was saying, we're talking about Judgment Day. Now, ritualistically speaking, or symbolically speaking, Yom Kippur in the Torah is a Judgment Day. And so we look to that symbolic Judgment Day for information about the real Judgment Day. Lo and behold, we get the information we need. In Leviticus 16, it talks about 3 rituals performed by the high priest on Yom Kippur. And these 3 rituals, it turns out, match up with the 3 holy feast times in the Torah to do with the harvest season, which is symbolic of harvest of souls, and the end of the age, the end of the harvest, corresponds to the end of the church age. Okay, Deuteronomy 16:16, it lists the 3 big feast times in which all the males in the nation were supposed to assemble at the temple. And it actually represents all the people, all of the country, assembling together at the temple. But because that would not be practical, only the males come. And the women stay home and run things at home. And anyway, the first of the feasts is Passover. It was fulfilled, or the ritualistic symbolism in Yom Kippur was fulfilled at Passover when Christ went to heaven. That fulfilled the high priest carrying a bowl of calf blood into the Holy of Holies. The Holy of Holies stands for heaven. The high priest stands for Christ, and the blood stands for the life or the soul, and the calf stands for the high priest. Anyway, it was fulfilled at Passover 30 AD, AD 30, at the time of the cross. Based on that precedent, we can say that the second ritual in Yom Kippur should be fulfilled at the second feast time, which is Pentecost. Okay, I'm back. Now, the symbolism of the second ritual in Yom Kippur in Leviticus 16 is simply the high priest comes down from the Holy of Holies. He picks up a bowl of goat's blood and carries it back into the Holy of Holies. Now this represents Christ coming down from heaven and gathering the souls of the saints, the Christians and the Jews, and carrying them or escorting them back into heaven. See, the blood represents the soul, and the goat represents the congregation of Israel, and that in turn, by extension, represents the church, which is the offspring of Israel. So the second ritual is the rapture, which occurs at the time of the sudden destruction, which in turn is the Russian attack on America and on Europe and on our military bases around the world. Based on what I just said, we can pin it down, the rapture, to the time of Pentecost. And this particular Pentecost, 2018, seems apropos because this year is the 70th anniversary of the return of Israel, and 70 is the length of a generation. And Christ said, one generation after the return of Israel, that's when all, quote, all these things will come to pass. Now these things, the second group of things refers to the end time, and there's four signs there that refer to nuclear war. The signs in the sky, the darkening of the sun, that is the effect produced. It's effect. What is it called? Light wave inversion. That's when all the waves, the troughs of one wave, are canceled out by the crest of another wave, superimposed on the first wave. Anyway, there's a moment of blackness. It's not that the sun turns black. It's the fact that everything turns black for a second. And then another sign that's not given in the Gospels, but is given in the later version in the book of Revelation. It says the sky will roll up like a scroll, and will disappear. Will pass away like a scroll being rolled. Now think of a mushroom cloud. As it rolls out, doesn't it fade away? And isn't the rolling action similar to the rolling up of a scroll to some extent? Okay. Anyway, that's nuclear war. And now Christ said, a generation from the point that these things begin. Quote, these things begin. That's Luke 21:28. And the generation is mentioned in verse 32. Now, you take, when these things begin, that's referring to where Christ said, the time of the Gentiles ruling over Israel, over Jerusalem, and so on, will come to an end. And by definition, when one period ends, a new period begins. So the time of the end of the Gentile rule is actually indirectly the time of the return of Jewish rule over the land. And that points to 1948. And so that's the starting point of the generation. We add 70 years, which is the generation length given in Psalms 90, verse 10. And so that brings us to 2018. Now, because America has disarmed so completely at this point, actually it was like last year, and because Russia has practiced a civil defense program where they evacuated, I think it was 4 million people, or 40 million people from the big cities of Russia. This was back in October of 16 or 17. because they practice that, that tells us that they're actually ready and for the attack. And they've done some other. Okay, they have smeared the reputation of America over the last 2 or 3 years. The rate of visceral attack has, it's like the difference between night and day. Correspondents, reporters on NPR have reported a sea change in the way that America is vilified on Russian media. Now, why would Russia be doing that? Well, they're preparing their people for the Russian government attacking America. They want their people to have the attitude that America deserved what they got. And so they're training the people. They're demonizing America for the sake of indoctrinating their people to think in terms of what I just said. So get ready for the month of May. I think Pentecost is, the Jewish Pentecost is like the 19th, and the Christian Pentecost is like the 20th, which is very nice that they're both together. It makes it easy to choose which one, or you don't have to choose. And the idea is that sometime in the month of May, it really should be within a few days of Pentecost, I'm sorry to say that we will go through a very trying time, and but the good news is that when the bad day comes, we should rejoice that once of us not in the big cities, we should rejoice that the people in the big cities that have been taken out, they have been raptured. And the just will be the wicked will be severed from among the just. That means that's from Matthew 13, verse 49 through 51. It's talking about the parable of the net. And it's talking about the rapture because the net are caught up. I mean, the fish are caught up in the net, and that describes what happens at the rapture. People are caught up. Okay, we should rejoice at that time for them, but also because we know that Christ will come and defeat the Russians within 5 months from the day that they attack America. Christ will avenge America, and Christ will prevent a Russian-Chinese war. He shortens the days of the tribulation, Matthew 24:22, because otherwise there would be a big war, a super war between China and Russia, because China does not like Russia taking away China's 2 top trading partners, Europe and America. See, Russia will take Europe, and Russia will bomb America. China doesn't like that one bit. China will get ready to go to war, and then Christ comes and prevents the war for the sake of his elect, which is the Christians in China, in Russia, because they've suffered enough. Where does it say 5 months in the Bible to confirm the 5-month length of the tribulation period? Revelation 9, verse 5 and 10, and it's talking about the locusts of iron, which make the sounds of war chariots running to battle. That tells you it's talking about battle tanks and armored vehicles that carry troops and that are fighting vehicles. And the idea is that in that verse, or the verses in that passage, it says people will want to die, but death will flee from them. Now, during the war, that's the time of killing, but after the war, that's the time of occupation of Europe by Russia, and killing is not done at that time very much. And so that passage is clearly talking about the time of the occupation of Europe by Russian tanks, and that gives you that embodies the tribulation. So we know That's the tribulation situation, the context. And so the 5 months fits the tribulation. Now, if it ends after just 5 months, that tells you Christ comes that soon after Russian attack. Call me at 434-808-6936 or contact me through joegracegrace at gmail.com. That's JOEGRACE GRACE.